This episode is brought to you by Pine Melon, the farmer's market delivered. They deliver Colorado's freshest local produce straight to your doorstep. Pine Melon is a next-generation grocery delivery app that partners with over 200 local farmers, ranchers, and producers right here in Colorado. So I need dragon fruit, some of those cotton candy grapes. Oh, I love those grapes. Cherries. Is it cherry season? Pine Melon offers same-day delivery to Denver and Boulder within a 2-hour window. No subscription necessary. So support local today and use promo code CityCastDenver for $75 off your first delivery at pinemelon.com. Hey Denver, it's Bree. We are mere days away from the primary elections all across the state, and we're almost to the finale of Lauren Boebert Can't Lose, our spin-off series exploring the rise of Colorado's most infamous politician. You can catch up on the first 4 episodes at the links in our show notes, but today, please enjoy episode 5, where we dig into the highly strategic and canny ways Boebert has bounced back from the Beetlejuice scandal in her run for an entirely new seat in Congress. Enjoy!
A little over a month ago, right after we posted the trailer for this series, our host, Bree Davies, picked me up in her Honda CR-V on a Saturday afternoon to go meet Congresswoman Lauren Boebert.
In my old neighborhood, picking you up, Paul. I love being over here.
We were on our way from Denver to the small town of Bennett, Colorado, about 45 minutes directly east, to see her in action on the campaign trail in her new, much more conservative district.
So I was trying to figure out how to pump myself up for this weird experience.
Did you figure it out? Because I've been struggling. We haven't talked much about ourselves in this series, but for me and Bree, this has been an increasingly uncomfortable and confusing experience. I have one uncle-in-law who lives in Boebert's new district and I think might be voting for her, but everyone I know here in Denver hates her guts. They loathe everything she stands for and love laughing at her failures. But here we were, still compelled to try to understand her.
What about you, Paul?
I've just been anxious, pacing a lot.
Oh, man. It's nerve-wracking. It's weird. And I don't know. It is very bizarre. And then on the other side of it, I'm like, we're also just trying to go meet a person.
Yeah.
She's just a person. Though I will say I wore foundation today in case we take a picture because she wears a lot of foundation, which is not a problem. But if you wear foundation and the person next to you is not wearing it, they look like a ghoul. So if I take a picture with Lauren Boebert, hopefully our makeup level is the same. This is where I'm at, Paul.
I had been in touch with Boebert's campaign manager about an interview for the show, and after a call and several weeks of sporadic emails back and forth, he suggested that we might meet up at this Republican primary debate in Bennett and maybe talk about the possibility of maybe doing an interview. But other than that, we had no idea what to expect. What we do know is that I've talked to her campaign manager who comes to Colorado from Arizona, where he ran some very MAGA political issues, some races. It sounded like he was open to it, but also they heard the trailer and they what was his quote? I gotta pull it out.
He wasn't real keen on it. Something like he'd heard it and was not so sure after that, which I understand, but also I don't think we've represented ourselves as anything but what the trailer of the show is conveying. We thought about it a lot.
I think they have no idea what we're doing.
Yeah, that's fair.
We had been working on this project for months, interviewing dozens of her former friends and rivals, journalists who've covered her rise to power, and people affected by her policymaking in Congress, all to try to get inside her head and understand the human person at the center of this political moment. And then all of a sudden, we were there. We parked in the Bennett Middle School's lot, followed some handwritten signs into the gym, and there she was, surrounded by her fellow Republicans, 5'0", turquoise gemstones on her cowboy hat, owning the room. 8 months after Beetlejuice, here she was pitching her persona in a brand new district, and no one was laughing at her in this room. That scandal wasn't the end of her career. It was a new beginning.
Lauren Boebert made her name by representing her hometown and the people of Rifle, Colorado. She represented their values when her gun-themed restaurant went viral. She represented their anger when she confronted Beto O'Rourke. She represented their resentment when she interrupted President Biden's State of the Union. And she represented their interest in Congress until she didn't. This is Lauren Boebert Can't Lose, Episode 5. Who or what does she represent now? And what's it going to take for her to keep on winning? I'm Bree Davies, host of the daily news and culture podcast CityCast Denver. And as always, I'm joined by our producer, Paul Caroli.
Hey, Bree.
Paul, can you give us a quick recap?
Well, over the last 2 episodes, we talked about how Boebert lost the support of many veterans through her voting record, and how she lost a lot more people when the Beetlejuice video leaked to the press and everyone saw her being super rude to service workers. Remember the theater's incident report saying that she asked the security team escorting her out, quote, "Do you know who I am?" But just as people were counting her out, we started seeing a shift in her public persona. Like when former Boebert campaign volunteer Savannah Wolfson was lamenting the loss of the candidate she used to love.
I think she fell in love with Washington. I think she uses her job as personal validation for her worth. And I think Washington can do that to people. You know, like it's very intoxicating and fast-paced. And fame is really harmful to anyone. But if you already have a personality that overindulges, it's going to be bad for you.
Somewhere between the Beetlejuice scandal and her divorce and all the trips back and forth from D.C., Lauren Boebert has changed. She's not serving burgers and beers to people who work on natural gas rigs anymore. Instead, she's yucking it up on Twitter Spaces with disgraced former Congressman George Santos.
George Santos was at Universal Studios and ran up to the Beetlejuice character like a schoolgirl. Sorry, George, no pun intended.
Oh, totally schoolgirl here. Yeah, super schoolgirl.
So he runs up to Beetlejuice so giddy, and he's like, "Oh my gosh, my friend Lauren loves you." And he got a video.
This is a recording from a Twitter space they did together in April of this year, not long after Page Six reported that they were, quote, 2 peas in a pod at a late night party back in December in New York City.
But yeah, so no, I do want to see the end. But, you know, we got Beetlejuice 2 coming out, and I'm still waiting for Michael Keaton to send me an invite to the premiere.
But even while she's ingratiating herself with DC elites and a former drag queen like Santos, she still managed to win over the rural conservatives of her new district. Kaplan Strategies conducted the first and still only worthwhile poll of Boebert's new Congressional District 4 on May 31st of this year. And they found that despite her various scandals and antics, and the way she almost lost a reliably red district to a Democrat, she was 35 percentage points ahead of her closest challenger. And she's crushing them in fundraising, too. The Colorado Sun reported that in the last reporting period, she raised almost twice as much as all 5 of her opponents combined.
So after a quick break, we're hitting the campaign trail with the one reporter who can take us inside the minds of District 4 voters to explain how she's pulling it off. This episode is brought to you by Central City Opera. Central City Opera's Summer Festival is almost here. Don't miss your opportunity to experience exceptional musical theater and opera in the Central City Opera House. Immerse yourself in this historic 1878 theater's vintage Wild West vibes while taking in shows like Pirates of Penzance, Girl of the Golden West, and Street Scene. Central City Opera is focused on providing opera for the people. It's not just about tuxes and opera glasses, though you're welcome to dress up if you want to. I have this prom dress from the 90s that I need an excuse to wear again, but it's like this iridescent peach color, and I have no other place to wear it. And I think the Central City Opera House would be perfect. But this is Colorado. Folks are welcome to come in jeans and flannels if they want. You can find tickets and a performance schedule at centralcityopera.org/citycast. Book tickets by June 30th and use the code CityCast at checkout for 20% off all performances after July 18th. Again, book using code CityCast at centralcityopera.org/citycast. This episode is brought to you by Young People for All People, a leading voice for young people in Colorado focused on building the next generation's power. Primary election day is June 25th. But hold up, what is a primary election and how can you vote? Head to neweraColoradoAction.org for a one-stop shop of all the information you need to vote in your party's primary election by 7 p.m. on June 25th. In Colorado, it's never too late to register to vote. You can register to vote or update your registration at a voter service center in your county. Just be in line by 7 p.m. on Election Day. And yes, students can vote, as long as they've lived in Colorado for at least 22 days before Election Day. So as long as you've lived in Colorado since June 3rd, you're good to vote. Find out if you have the chance to vote for a Youth Agenda champion in the Denver area on June 25th by visiting neweraColoradoAction.org. This ad is brought to you by Young People for All People, a leading voice for young people in Colorado focused on building the next generation's power. This ad is also paid for by Young People for All People, Christina Solis, registered agent. This ad is not authorized by any candidate or candidates committee. Right before the break, we talked about how Lauren Boebert is no longer some plucky upstart politician and how she jumped into this Republican primary in a whole new district with a whole lot of baggage, yet somehow is still the odds-on favorite to win.
So we were asking each other this question, and then we were like, let's just call up friend of the show, Heidi Beadle.
I started it earlier, but recording now.
Heidi Beadle is a reporter with the Colorado Times-Recorder and our go-to source to understand what's happening with all the far-right fringe groups that have been popping up here in Colorado the last few years.
It's this interconnected kind of web or ecosystem or network. And it tries to get obscured in all these ways so that it's just like, well, it's just our local church that is doing this. And, but it's not.
Sometimes talking to Heidi can feel like you're standing in front of a corkboard covered in grainy photos and string connecting this group to that politician or that millionaire to this protest.
Because they're getting these donations from these other organizations and Donors Trust and
Just can't stop.
Yeah, once you start picking back the layers, it goes on and on and on.
After the Beetlejuice scandal last year, Heidi started following Boebert to events all across the state. Heidi watched her work crowds, interact with voters, and develop the new persona she has now.
She is, fiery and she's got the bombacity of Trump and the kind of populist attitudes, and she's got the credibility from being in DC and fighting these things. And I think in a lot of ways she's got all the enmity of the liberal media, right? Voters kind of, especially MAGA voters, kind of see that and they're like, well, if Heidi Beadle's writing about her, then she must be doing something right,
Another thing Boebert did right early in this race was lock up former President Trump's endorsement. On March 2nd, he posted to Truth Social, calling her a, quote, proven conservative and effective leader who would, quote, stand up to the radical Democrats who want to destroy our beautiful country. And Boebert promptly spent some of her massive fundraising war chest on an ad showcasing the endorsement.
Lauren, you're going to do fantastically in your district. Lauren Boebert, thank you.
President Donald J. Trump has endorsed America First warrior Lauren Boebert for Congress. Trump says Congresswoman Boebert is a proven conservative.
According to the Washington Post, she'd been gaining influence with the new Trump-loving GOP establishment in D.C., too. It was reportedly Lauren Boebert, of all people, who first suggested that Representative Mike Johnson of Louisiana might make a good Speaker of the House. The new Speaker then returned the favor by endorsing her and showing up to one of her Washington fundraisers.
Stand with President Trump and vote Lauren Boebert for Congress.
I'm Lauren Boebert, and I approve this message.
So you've been on the campaign trail with Lauren Boebert. What does her campaign look and feel like for this CD4 race?
I mean, it's, she knows what her audience likes and she plays the hits, very heavy emphasis on kind of religion. Every time I've heard her speak, she's very big on talking about prayer and quoting the Bible and, a lot of listening to, the speeches, half the time they kind of sound like sermons, and she, maybe would have a wonderful career post political office running a church or something.
We haven't really touched on Boebert's faith much in this series so far, but according to the Colorado Sun, she became a born-again Christian in 2009, and it sounds like she's been leaning into it more and more.
And then just kind of throwing bombs on the big issues of the day, right? So immigration, culture war issues. She's gonna fire the Secretary of Defense because the military's woke now and we're kicking out veterans. She repeats these debunked stories about, veterans being kicked out of hotels to make room for immigrants and things like that. But it's the audience loves it. That's what people want to hear. That's what, her base wants. Like, that's what the MAGA crowd wants.
So please give us a round of applause for Lauren Boebert.
I want to go back to her faith specifically, because I don't know if she's just emphasizing it more in this campaign, but like, how does she talk about faith on the campaign trail from like a personal perspective?
One thing that she does, she kind of like identifies with like these, biblical figures, right? So like Esther in the Bible and, Ruth, and the story in the Bible where the woman like drives a tent peg through a dude's head. And, she's like, we got to pick up the hammers, and the kind of battle cry, right? That she does say a lot. And I've heard her say repeatedly, right? You were made for such a time as this. And she really kind of frames her position in terms of like the providence of God, right? Like I had a GED and I was running a restaurant, and here I am now in Congress, and it's all part of God's plan. And
God says if you declare a thing, it shall be established. God says to call those things that be not as though they were. Our words are creative power. What are you creating with your words? Are we going to take what we see in the natural and create what we know God's vision for Colorado is?
Does she address the Beetlejuice Theater situation when she's on the trail? Like herself? I mean, does she bring it up, or how does that play?
Oh, yeah. Like she makes kind of jokes about it. And the events that I've been at, like, people love it. They think it's hilarious.
I need to lift that burden off of you, to represent you, and to avoid infrared cameras.
While she was consolidating the support of the MAGA faithful in the state Republican Party, the other thing Boebert had to do was actually move to the district she wants to represent. She told the Washington Post that she landed in the small northern Colorado town of Windsor because she needed to find a faith community that could handle her, quote, rowdiness. People were freaking out about me dancing in the seat at Beetlejuice, she said. Well, they should see me in church.
I'm also just thinking about this juxtaposition between her talking about this quote unquote sort of salacious behavior, just saying it outright, while also being in these rooms and spaces where she's promoting her faith and being a Christian and like what being a Christian means to her. And are these two things ever at odds in the rooms that you're in? I mean, how does that play?
I mean, I think some people certainly would point out that there's kind of some issues there, but this is the same base that supports Donald Trump and, believes that Donald Trump is, a Christian. And Lance Wallnau, who was one of the early sort of evangelical supporters of Trump, framed him as like, he's like King Cyrus, this figure in the Bible that helped the Israelites restore, Jerusalem and the temple. And, God used King Cyrus, even though he wasn't, a believer, and God can use Trump and bring Christians to glory and this kind of thing. So it doesn't really matter if they actually live these things or believe these things, or the litmus test is just that they're going to say the things they want to hear. And then when they get to DC, like do the things that they want done. And these folks, they kind of, the base, Christians, like, it's a faith based on, personal transformation and repentance and admitting that you're a wretched sinner and asking God for forgiveness. And people love the idea of that kind of story arc, right?
The redemption.
Yes.
Paul, we just heard Heidi Beadle break down this redemption story Boebert is trying to sell on the campaign trail, but we saw it for ourselves out in Bennett. How much of that do you want to talk about?
Well, yeah, we did see what Heidi said we'd see, right? Boebert cracked jokes about Beetlejuice. She talked about her faith, hit some of the usual talking points. I did write down one line, and keep in mind, this was the day before Mother's Day, and she was like, too many men in this country want to be mothers, which is just, what are you even talking about?
Yeah, I have no idea. But she was clearly the center of gravity in the room, way more than the other 5 candidates.
And that's the piece I do want to talk about, actually, to give you a better sense of who she's running against. I want to talk about Richard Holtorf.
Oh, geez.
Yes, so Richard is a state legislator, a veteran, and a rancher, and he's made headlines in Denver for a lot of the wrong reasons lately, like the time his gun fell out of his pants in the bathroom while he was rushing to a vote at the Capitol, or recently when 9 News reported that he paid for an ex-girlfriend's abortion decades ago, despite being a staunch opponent of reproductive health care. So he's a character for sure, but he had just said something on local conservative talk radio that got some attention online.
You know, I raised 5 daughters, and I'm going to say this loud and proud. My 5 daughters, if they stood in front of me in a group of 20, 50, 100 people, dressed like Boebert, I would be disgusted.
He said this on KNUS, right as we were putting the finishing touches on the first episode of this series, which was the one about the escort rumor that people still repeat about Boebert.
Let me tell you something. I work here at the state capitol, 200 East Colfax. You know what I see about 2 blocks up from the state capitol? I see women dressed like Boebert. High heels, short skirt, low-cut blouse. And I won't tell you what they're doing, but it's nothing that you can talk to your grandmother about. She can carry that Bible and act like a Baptist minister all she wants. But, you know, actions speak louder than words.
So this was on our minds after the debate, as we waited for our chance to maybe possibly talk Boebert and her campaign manager into an interview. All the candidates were shaking hands and meeting people in the audience, and who walks up to us but Mr. Richard Holtorf himself.
So what's the name of your podcast, sir?
Let me give you a card. When he found out we're from Denver, he decided to tell us all of his opinions, because he has to live there part of the year when he's serving in the legislature.
And some guy went and punctured like 30 tires on a whole bunch of vehicles, including my Chevy Silverado a couple nights ago. I don't know if you heard about that story.
No, we didn't.
But we eventually made our way to the issue at hand. Well, Mr. Holtorf, I have to ask you about some comments I saw from you recently in the news. You were talking about your opponent, Lauren Boebert, and you were saying that she...
710 KNUS on the Jeff and Bill show. And I did make some pretty terse comments.
Specifically, let me say, you said she dresses like a prostitute.
No, I didn't. I didn't say that.
What did you say?
Thank you for allowing me to clarify my words. Now, let's start with this. I'm a father of 5 daughters, okay? And I have been around young ladies a long time. Here's what I said. I said, my daughters, they know how to dress because they were raised right. But when I see people at the state capitol that are dressed a certain way, and then I go to a campaign event and I see a candidate arguably dressed the same way, I think that's a problem.
Now, at this point, the debate had been over for a few minutes, and you can still hear some people milling around in the background in the gym, but it was definitely starting to clear out.
How does that affect her politics? I don't understand what her outfit has to do with how she works as a politician.
About the controversy behind Lauren. She's had a lot of controversy.
Sure, I'm well aware.
A lot of those. So let's talk about decorum. As a statesman or stateswoman, let's talk about decorum. You actually have to dress a certain way at the state capitol, and you're supposed to dress a certain way. They have these rules for decorum.
Okay. But how does that affect her? I still don't understand how it changes the work that she does.
Well, you know, look at the controversy that surrounds her and what has happened and how she dresses. Do you think that has anything to do with her controversy?
At this point, while Bree was talking to Holtorf, I saw out of the corner of my eye that Boebert and her campaign manager were just a few feet away from us. And I'm pretty sure they were listening in to this exchange.
No, but in Eastern Colorado, if you're going to represent Eastern Colorado, you might want to consider that you want to be respectful. Look, I've lived in Eastern Colorado since 1969. Okay. For 5 years, I've been talking to people in the district, and I know them arguably better than Lauren. 100%. She doesn't know Eastern Colorado. She moved to Windsor and's lived there, what, a month?
You must have heard those doors close a second ago, and you can now hear that the gymnasium is entirely empty, except for me, Bree, Holtorf, and a few feet away, Boebert and her campaign manager standing right there.
All right, let's take
Mr. Holtorf, thank you so much for your time.
We're good.
I think we've taken up plenty of your time. Thank you so much.
You bet.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate speaking with you.
Yep.
Let's see how much you chop off of that.
Well, I'll try. I edit for clarity and brevity, but I will try to represent you as best I can.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
And with that, Richard Holtorf exited the stage. We sat down with Boebert and her campaign manager and talked for the very first time. And we made the case for why she should do an interview with us, because we wanted to hear her side of the story and we wanted to give her the chance to tell it. Who does she think she represents now? And what is it going to take for her to keep on winning? I have no idea how she thought it would help her campaign, if she even needed any help, but whatever we said must have convinced her. Because a couple of days later, I got a text from her campaign manager. It was a Monday afternoon, and we were working on something entirely different for our daily show, and he was like, "Are you free tonight?" So we dumped our plans, threw together some questions, and drove up to her home in Windsor.
It was 8 p.m. Her mom and her dog greeted us at the door. There were still moving boxes everywhere.
She offered us a couple of black raspberry LaCroix, and we sat down at her kitchen table to talk. Will you tell me what you had for breakfast this morning?
I do not eat breakfast. Breakfast slows me down.
That's next time on the final episode of Lauren Boebert Can't Lose. This has been Lauren Boebert Can't Lose, a production of CityCast Denver, where you can find me and Paul every day talking about the latest news and culture in Denver, Colorado. We'd also like to take a minute to thank everyone who helped out on this series, especially our other producers, Olivia Jewel Love and Xander McMahon, and the team at CityCast, including Will Fulton, Andy McDaniel, David Plotz, Andrea Salenzi, and Noah Snyderman. Thanks also to Joshua Emerson for production support. Our music is by Don Chicharron and Los Mocachetes. You can learn more about us and this special series at denver.citycast.fm and let us know what you think in a text or a voicemail at 720-500-5418. Enjoy the interview, and we'll see you next time.